Welcome back to Simplify in the State. I'm Adam Watson.
And I'm Nicholas Perrin.
With Election Day closing in, both campaigns are making their last big pushes. Today we're covering Kamala Harris's final pitch from the Ellipse in Washington, the fallout from Trump's recent rally at Madison Square Garden, and which 2024 races could be real game changers. Okay, so last week Harris made her closing statement case of the campaign at the Ellipse in Washington, D.C., in front of an estimated 75,000 people, outlining her campaign's priorities and trying to connect with undecided voters. So she generally had a message of unity and stability. She highlighted the importance of voting rights, healthcare, economic reform, etc., and then also try to bridge the divides between parties, saying, "quote I will always listen to you even if you don't vote for me." It would, by most, well, pretty much all degrees, it was a fairly good speech. It hit the necessary topics that she needed to cover. She highlighted the top issues. She talked about abortion. She talked about it was kind of like a 50-50 split between what she will do and what her opponent would do on their first couple months in office. She said one of the lines she used and has been using a little bit is he will walk in with an enemies list. I will walk in with a to-do list. That's the kind of message she's been trying out. Nicholas, what do you think of the speech and what it could mean and kind of how it could impact the election as we enter the now 4 days before Election Day? Jesus.
You good?
Yeah, it's just 4 days to Election Day.
Oh,
Sneaks
yeah.
up on you.
Ugh. Okay, so yeah, I thought it was a pretty good speech. Harris emphasized what I think she needed to, that being healthcare and housing. The ramifications of this will probably be, not too noticeable, especially so close to the election. It'll be likely the last image that many voters will have Harris in their minds when they're up at the ballots. And that image will likely be positive. However, I don't think it'll impact their opinion on Harris because, it's so close to the election and they've probably had a lot of time to make up their minds, even if they say they're undecided.
Right. Yeah, I mean, right now, last time I checked, it was 66 million, probably more than that now. 66 million ballots have already been cast. It's really looking like we are on track to have one of the largest voter turnout possibly. And yeah, I think you're right. I think this was definitely her last big nationwide appearance that she'll be doing. Obviously, she's still hitting the battleground states. She was in Wisconsin today, I think. She was in the Southeast yesterday. She's going to hit North Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin through the weekend. And so, yeah, I think this was the campaign's last big case to the American people, as they put it. I mean, yeah. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the fallout from the Trump rally at Madison Square Garden. So this rally had its high energy moments, but it also stirred up some controversy with many racist and bigoted things were said by a couple of the guests who were invited to speak, the most prominent of which was when comedian Tony Hinchcliffe, I believe is how you pronounce his name, made an unscripted joke that was seen as offensive toward Puerto Ricans. He referred to Puerto Rico as a, quote, floating island of garbage, unquote. The Trump campaign is now dealing with the backlash. This could be important because there are a little over than 470,000 Puerto Ricans within Pennsylvania, which is obviously, it has been dubbed the crucial swing state, as many pundits believe that Harris's best chance of winning is through Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and the second congressional district in Nebraska. But I mean, pushing past the political ramifications, it is somewhat concerning to like see people at a rally for president of the United States, who is of the one of the two major parties, making fairly hateful remarks towards so many groups of people. There were also derogatory things said about black people, Jewish people, and Palestinians. There were derogatory remarks towards Kamala Harris herself. Uh, yeah, it's just kind of concerning to see another. Like I've seen many pundits make comparisons to a Bund rally that was held there in 1939. For those who don't know, the Bund was basically a an American chapter of like it was basically like American Nazis, based kind of and they held a rally there in 1939. And the thing that drew comparison to that is when Stephen Miller, who was a top campaign official in his when he was president beforehand, and now is possibly on the short list to be his chief of staff, made a statement which was America being for Americans, which was similar to a speaker at that 1939 rally who said, "Restore America to true Americans." And so you're definitely kind of, I feel like you're kind of seeing a resurgence of like nationalistic ideas and stuff, and it was just kind of concerning to see that. Nicholas, what did you think about like the rally and its potential political ramifications?
I mean, yeah, the comparison between this and the Bund rally is like pretty clear in my opinion, and along with Trump's former chief of staff coming out and accusing Trump of being a Nazi, was it?
No, it was not accusing him of being a Nazi. It was accusing him of having like fascist tendencies, and then referencing one time when he said, "I wish I want." I'm not sure what the exact quote was, but it was along the lines of, "I want the generals that Hitler had." It was something along those lines.
Yeah. There's a moth in my room. Anyway, yeah, like with Trump's former chief of staff saying that he has fascist tendencies, and the comparisons drawn between the Madison Square rally and the Bund rally really could make voters really think about who they're really voting for if they vote for Trump. Are they voting for a fascist, or are they voting for like who Trump claims to be? Like,
Yeah, I mean, I think it all goes back to what we've talked about before, which is how like when people are making up their minds, if there are still people, obviously there are still going to be undecided voters, some of whom might not even make up their minds till they go into the actual ballot box. But when they are making up their minds, whichever, sometimes something that influences it is like the top news story of that week. And so, you know, Trump's comments said at a Trump rally in Madison Square Garden, like a rally of this size, somebody saying very hateful things, like if you're a Puerto Rican who lives in Pennsylvania and you were possibly on the fence about voting for Trump or voting for Harris, and then you see a news story that was comedian at Trump rally says Puerto Rico is a floating island of garbage. I mean, that might possibly influence your decision and possibly influence you and make you want to vote for Kamala Harris. It is worth noting that the Trump campaign has come out and said that they did not know that he was going to make this joke. It was an unscripted, unscreened joke, and they have since distanced themselves from this comedian. Uh, yeah, and I think this also could not only hurt him in Pennsylvania, but also could hurt him in key Latino heavy states like Nevada and Arizona, and then possibly help uh, the Democrat running for Senate in Florida if that campaign can tie Rick Scott to those comments. Obviously, Florida has like a million Puerto Ricans living in there. They have a very high Puerto Rican population. And so, if that campaign can possibly use this comment, that could help Democrats win that Senate seat. Okay, so now we're going to move on to key races that people should possibly be watching on election night. So we're going to be talking about the key races in the three different like race groups. The presidential election, Senate election, and the House elections. So obviously, we've talked about the key battleground states, but I think for people who are Harris supporters, I think here are going to be the key races to watch. So many pundits have said that Harris's easiest and probably best chance of winning runs through. Sorry, let me pull up my election map here. Runs through Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and the second congressional district of Nebraska. Now, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin are states that Harris is doing decent in. If she does have a lead in battleground states, those are where she has leads in. So if she wins those three states plus the congressional district, she gets exactly 270. And even if Trump sweeps the Sun Belt, which is North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Nevada, that would still only give him 268, not enough to win the presidency. If Harris were to lose Pennsylvania, uh, she would then need to win a two other battlegrounds. Well, possibly, yeah, two other battleground states. So if she loses Pennsylvania, she would have to win either North Carolina and Nevada, or maybe North Carolina and Arizona, Arizona and Georgia, Georgia and Nevada. Either way, it would have to be Georgia or North Carolina and then Nevada or Arizona. Uh, so, Nicholas, what do you think about the key races to watch in that presidential election?
I mean, yeah, like what you said, the more typically uh, like Harris leaning states that that it's more likely to win with are going to be good to watch, as well as certain races where the comment on Puerto Rico could make a big difference, like Pennsylvania, Florida, and even maybe like Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico, because they have a lot of Latino people there who could be affected by the comment and vote blue rather than red if they were to have.
Right. I do also think, though, it could be challenging to win Michigan. That could be a challenge because obviously there is Michigan has like one of the largest Arab American populations in the country, and there has been some concern amongst Arab Americans over the Biden administration's handling of the conflict in Gaza, and so that could be an issue. I know there was a massive movement there in the primaries, voting uncommitted as like a sign of protest against President Biden. It's unclear if that resentment towards Biden will then transfer over to Harris, or if possibly she has distanced herself enough from this issue uh, to avoid the possible anger felt by Arab Americans over the situation in Gaza. I think, though, here there is something interesting I was reading, which was the county around Pittsburgh is, I think, could be a good indication of how that state might go. So the county around Pittsburgh is Allegheny County. Biden won it by about, I think it was 56, something around that number in 2020. John Fetterman, who is running for Senate, who is the current senator in Pennsylvania, won it by around 60, and then Josh Shapiro won it by around 65. So if Harris can get around 60% in that county, which is the county around Pittsburgh, then she has a pretty good shot of winning, as just indicated, although Pittsburgh, a city like Pittsburgh, is probably a fairly leaning Democratic city. So that, again, it's not a concrete way to predict the state, but it's certainly something that people could look at and possibly uh, guess how that state could go. So next, we're going to look at the Senate races and the key states, which could influence that. Before we do, one last thing I want to add, which is possibly why we should not trust what the polls are saying. So in 2016 and in 2020, there were massive polling errors, right? In 2016, all the polls showed that Hillary Clinton was going to win and possibly even win by a landslide, and that Trump had like a 15% chance of winning or something like that. Obviously, that turned out to not be true. Uh, so there was a massive polling error that favored the Democrats. Again, in 2020, there was a massive polling error which had Biden winning Georgia by like 6 points or 7 points or something like that. And obviously, he won it by about, I think it was like less than a point or something like that. So, again, a massive polling error which favored the Democrats. Now, polls show a very close tie. And I think there will probably be a polling error again, and one that probably favors Republicans more. And this is just my guess, possibly because, I mean, polling groups get paid based on how accurate they are, and so they don't want to, like, be wrong again, like they were the last two election cycles. So they are probably hesitant to favor the Democrats again. And so that's why I think you can't really trust the polls, especially in a race which we know is going to be tight. But yeah, I think refreshing the polling average on 538.com is probably not a useful thing. Okay, so moving now on to the key Senate races. So, like we talked about last time, Republicans have a slightly better chance of taking the Senate. They have a stronger map. They are doing better in Montana. They are doing, and all they have to do is win, Montana, and then they will get 51 and then hold on to all their states. So the key races to watch, I think, are going to be Ohio, they're going to be Montana, Texas, Florida, and then the Senate race in the Maine, Nebraska, not the second congressional district, Maine, Nebraska district. And that is because right now the incumbent in Ohio is a Democrat, and it looks like that he is in a tie, and but that's just based on the polls. And like we said, you can't really trust polls, but based on that, it looks like he is in a tie with the Republican. In Montana, the state went fairly. It went fairly handily to Trump. I think he won it by like 15 points or something like that, at least 15 points, which is a larger margin than he won Ohio by. So that's one reason that John Tester, who's the incumbent Democrat, is facing a fairly strong challenge from Tim Sheehy, I think his name is. But in order to get a majority, Democrats would need to keep Ohio, and they would need to keep Montana just to get a tie. Just to get a tie, they would have to keep their two Senate seats. If they wanted to get a definite Democrat majority, then they would need to either win the Senate race in Texas or win the Senate race in Florida. If they wanted a possible uh, Democrat majority, or at least a not Republican majority, then Dan Osborne, who is running as an independent in Nebraska, would need to win. It's unclear who he would caucus with, but then that would at least guarantee the Republicans did not have a definite majority, and so that's what Democrats are probably looking at. I think the easiest path, obviously there are Senate races in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Arizona, and Nevada, but those are rated slightly more Democrat leaning. I think the easiest thing for Democrats to do, honestly, just based on that map, Florida is looking less likely than Texas, so I think they should focus on defending Ohio, defending Montana, and defending Texas. What do you think? I'm sorry, and taking Texas. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, with the recent comments, especially from the um, comedian at the Madison Square rally, I think like Texas would be a very good option. And from like what you said about Ohio, I think it'd be a good bet to going for Ohio.
Right.
Yeah, like I think at this point the Democrats need to take some risks because otherwise they'll likely, like, if they're lucky, get a tie in the Senate, and if they're unlucky, lose their majority.
Right, right. I definitely think getting a 51 majority is looking fairly unlikely. Getting a tie is what I see as the most likely best case scenario for Democrats in this situation. Um, I mean, obviously, the Democrats could get very lucky and win Florida or Texas, possibly for Florida with the Puerto Rico comments. But I think the most likely best case scenario for Democrats is getting a tie by winning Ohio and uh, either Montana or Texas, or possibly winning, getting Dan Osborne elected independent, just based on his policy positions. He's very pro union. He was a former union leader, former Navy, etc. So I think he could possibly. He's also said he is pro choice when it comes to abortion. So that is possibly something that the Democrats could look at possibly getting him to caucus with them. But I think it's going to be a real nail biter as to who wins the Senate. When we go to the House, though, things are looking slightly better for Democrats. If they defend all of their seats that they are currently holding, they would only need to pick up 4 seats to get a majority in the House. And with 19 Republicans stepping down at the end of this Congress, that is looking increasingly more likely that they will be able to get a majority in the House. Uh, a couple uh, House races to watch, I think, are 22 races to watch are toss-ups, 13 lean Democrat, and then 8 lean Republican. The 8 lean Republican are the Michigan 7th, Colorado 3rd, Michigan 10th, Montana 1st, New Jersey 7th, New York 17th, Virginia 2nd, and then Wisconsin 3rd. The 22 races that are toss-ups, which are held by Republicans, are the Arizona 1st, the Arizona 6th, the California 13th, California 22nd, the California 27th, California 41st, the 45th, which is also in California, the Iowa 1st and 3rd, the New York 19th, the Oregon 5th, and the Pennsylvania 10th. So obviously, the number that are either leaning and then the 13 that lead in Democrat, which are currently controlled by Republicans, are in the Nebraska 2nd, the New York 4th, and then the New York 22nd. So, Nicholas, what do you think about the Democrats' chances at taking back the House?
I mean, given from what I've seen and what I know, it does seem fairly unlikely. If anything, it seems like the Republicans will be able to hold on to their majority, they'll maybe lose it, but I feel it's more likely than not that they'll be able to hold on to it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, from what I've seen, it seems like the Republicans are not in a good position to defend their House seats, and I know that that's something that Speaker Mike Johnson has definitely been concerned about. He's been going around to all the close House races and campaigning with the Republicans running in those races. But again, it's the Cook Political Report has essentially rated the House race a toss-up again. So all three. So it seems like it's going to be a nail biter for all three, uh, parts of this: the House, the Senate, and the presidential race. It's going to be a nail biter and a close race. Okay, so a slightly longer episode than usual this week. Obviously, it's the last episode before Election Day, which is only 4 days away. Yikes. Uh, so before we go, again, like we talked about last time, the best way to make sure your voice is heard is to vote, get your friends to vote. If you are a student, get your parents to vote. You yourself, if you are over 18 and registered to vote, go vote. Vote early if you can. But yeah, that's the best way to make sure your voice is heard. Okay, so we'll talk to you next time when we will possibly have results for who won the presidential election, the House election, the Senate election. We'll talk to you then, break down who has won each state, which and which race so far. All right, and we'll talk to you about that then.